views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Welcome to the Community Board 8 Parks and Recreation Committee meeting this evening. The meeting is devoted to the topic of how to start and maintain a local Friends of group. Before we begin, just want to introduce myself. I'm Bob Bender. I chair the Parks and Recreation Committee of Community Board 8. I want to extend some thank yous before we start. Thank you to Manhattan College for allowing us to use this space this evening. I want to thank our friends from BronxNet who are going to be filming and broadcasting what we do here tonight. We have some special guests who are going to speak tonight. Councilman Andrew Cohen, Bronx Parks Commissioner Iris Rodriguez-Rosa. I also want to recognize Community Board 8 Chair Rosemary Ginty. What we're going to do this evening is, after some introductory remarks from the councilman and the commissioner, each of our four panelists will speak. These are folks who have started or maintained a local parks group over the years. They're going to talk about how they started their group and show you some slides of what they've been able to accomplish. And we have with us tonight from the Parks Department Leenda Bonilla, who is with the division of the Parks Department called the Partnership for Parks, and they work, Leenda works with local groups, local parks groups, and she is our liaison here in the Northwest Bronx, Community Board 8. And welcome to everybody for coming. Yay! So welcome to all of you for coming. The program tonight will be filmed and will be broadcast at a future date. So I'd like to introduce our councilman, Andrew Cohen.
Yay! Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I want to thank Bob for inviting me and organizing this. I think it's a great idea. And he thanked Manhattan College. And I don't know if you've read, but I've been picking on Manhattan College quite a bit lately. So I want to thank them for hosting us here so I can say something good, too. I think this is a great topic. I can't tell you how important I think that Friends are groups are. As a council member, for good, for bad, or for indifferent, the City Council provides an enormous amount of funding for our Parks Department, particularly on the capital side. And having stakeholders who are very knowledgeable about their parks and who are advocates for their parks is tremendously important to decision makers about how money gets spent in our parks. So I think there is really a vital role for people to take ownership, to make a commitment to being leaders and stewards of our parks. And so the benefits are myriad. So I really want to strongly encourage everyone. I will tell you one additional benefit. Long before I was the council member, I was a board member of the Friends of Cortlandt Park. So, you know, who knows what can come from getting involved in your local park. I really, again, want to thank Bob. We have a great commissioner of the Bronx Parks, as accessible. But again, she listens, and she's going to tell you that she listens to these groups, that they're important constituents, that we're looking for people to give us input. So that's a role that everybody here can play. I would really if you have an hour, give an hour. If you have a day, give a day. But really taking a leadership role in your park is a benefit not only to the park, but to the greater community. So again, I want to encourage everybody. I want to thank Bob for bringing us all together. And I'm looking forward to hear what the panel has to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Bronx Parks Commissioner Iris Rodriguez-Rosa. She's fabulous. We love her. She's a bundle of energy, and she's here tonight to say a few words to us. Commissioner.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you very much. For me, it's an honor and a privilege to be able to be here this evening because I say to Bob, this was the first actually Parks Committee meeting that I attended when I was Bronx Commissioner for the first time. And as I told him, the day I retire, it'll be the last Parks Committee that I'll attend as well. But for me, just to share with you that I have been here now 2.5 years. And for me, the foundation of what my career has been was when I started organizing groups. I started in Brooklyn, and I organized community organizations, black associations, tenant associations. So for me, I understand the importance of being able to have organized groups be able to advocate for whatever it is that is of interest to them. I happen to be very fortunate that I happen to work with elected officials that are so committed, so vocal, so strongly, just strong advocates. I mean, and Councilman Cohen knows that when I first met him, I mean, he was the first one to tell me, Commissioner, this is happening. We need this to happen. Why is this not happening? Why is this not going on? I gave him my commitment that I would do the very best that I can within my powers to be able to expedite and move projects along however possible. Because sometimes the direct way is not the possible way, but sometimes we have to find alternatives, but we need to try to make it happen. So what I always tell people, I said, I don't like us to be considered the borough of no's. I always like to be able to find alternatives, to be able to try to accommodate the organizations and the groups when they're asking for something. And to say, and I think I mentioned this to Christina earlier, it's important for us to know that sometimes there are requests that are being made by organizations and groups that cannot be honored. But that's not to say that we are not going to find alternatives to try to be able to accommodate. By the time, if we have to say no for something, it's not for the lack of trying and not for the lack of looking at what the possibilities are. So please always understand that. Sometimes we have many organizations that are in the borough that are volunteer groups. There are some that are what Leenda calls episodic, which may be just for a day of cleaning or an activity that's going on. And then there are groups that Christine will talk about that they have endured for over 25 years. And it's important for us to know that to be consistently persistent, okay? You have to be able to know that it's not just about one issue you may have, but there may be many issues that other people in the community may be interested in as well. And we need to make sure that the friends of groups are understanding the whole community and what their interests are. Sometimes there are projects that maybe there was a sort of a master plan. And what is important that because the master plans sometimes take a long time for it to become to fruition, it's important that also the community that is affected nearby is also consulted and be able to do that. So just to share with you that for me, it's always important to hear from you because you are the ones that take the time as volunteers, okay? Next to our families, as I always said before, and I think Bob has heard me say this many a time, next to your families and the things that are most precious to you is your time. Your time is very valuable, it's very important, and we as the Parks Department appreciate that, value that, and we want to always be able to hear from you what your interests and concerns are. So again, I want to thank Bob. I want to thank the panelists for being here this evening. I want to thank all the people that volunteer so many hours and so many days to do so many projects. Laura, you did that wonderful project in terms of the CSX. So everyone here has a role to play, and I want to say thank you. I'm going to stay here to hear many of your concerns, and I look forward to meeting many of you that I have not met because I think I know half of the room already. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. So we have 4 panelists tonight, and thank you to all of you for coming tonight and doing your presentations, talking about your groups. Before I introduce the first panelist, each of them will come up and present for a few minutes. Before I introduce the first one, I just wanted to say the motivation for this evening, the reason behind this evening, is that our public spaces are barometers of the health of our communities. If you go into a community and you see a park or a playground that's decrepit, the equipment's not in good condition, there are weeds everywhere, you probably know that that community has other problems, more serious problems in all likelihood. You go into a community where the parks and the playgrounds are maintained, where people are using them, they're out there enjoying their public space, there's a good chance that's a good, solid community. And that's what we want to do tonight. We want to make sure that all of our parks and all of our playgrounds are getting attention, not just from the Parks Department, which of course does what it can do, but in order to really make these parks and playgrounds flourish, we need the community to come together in support of them. And that's the idea behind these local friends of groups. So we'll start with I guess the most senior of the groups, because they've just celebrated their 25th anniversary, and that's the Friends of Van Cortlandt Park. And here to speak about the Friends is Christina Taylor, the Executive Director of the Friends of Van Cortlandt Park.
So I haven't been with the Friends for the full 25 years. I have been here for 17 of those years, though, and I know the story of how we started. So the Friends of Van Cortlandt Park, this is our mission statement, but one thing I did want to point out about it is that we are an independent community-based organization, which everybody on the panel tonight is. So in the parks world, for the nonprofit groups, there's two models. There's the independent community organizations, and then there's the public-private partnerships. The public-private partnerships are your Central Park Conservancy, your Prospect Park Alliance, the Van Cortlandt Park Conservancy. So the administrator is also the head, and they're very melded with the Parks Department. We are completely separate. So I am not a Parks employee, and it has its pros and its cons. We can kind of leave it at that. But really what we focus on, and I can answer more specifics about that later if you want, but our main motto is that we bring youth, community, and nature together. So this is a very brief summary of how we kind of grew over the years, but just to kind of give you a general idea, we started as a result of an article in the New York Times that said new friends wanted for Bronx Park. And I don't know how many of you, I wasn't in the city at the time in 1992, but I don't know how many of you did and saw the parks. But at that time, the budgets for New York City parks were declining. And they weren't being maintained at the level that they currently are being maintained at. A lot of people didn't use Van Cortlandt Park for what they do today. The cross-country course was there, so people did run it. The birders would use it, but there was a lot of issues and safety concerns with the park, and that's what the article highlighted. And at that time, they were about to cut their seasonal staff big time, and there was concerns about what would happen. So Felicity Nitz, who lived in Riverdale and still does, read the article and said, someone should do something about this. And her husband looked at her and said, well, why don't you do something about it? And she did. She got together with 5 of her friends, and the 6 of them, in less than a month, raised enough money to hire a dozen high school students to work in the park for the summer. And that first summer, all they did was pick up garbage. But that was the greatest need at the time. Today, the Friends, our main mission is not to pick up garbage anymore because the Parks Department has that staff they can. If we have a volunteer group that wants to pick up garbage, we will. We have no problem doing it. And we do it as part of our other projects too, but that's not our main focus. So we grew over the years. We became incorporated in 1994. We became a 501c3 organization in 1996. So for those of you that don't know, that means that you are a nonprofit, that if people give donations to us, it's tax deductible. We don't have to pay sales tax for certain items, things like that. Then we slowly grew over the years to the point of today, there are 4 of us that are full-time and there's 2 of us that are part-time. That's our staff. So over 25 years, that's how large we've grown, but we hope to continue to grow. So some of our main programs and things that we do in Van Cortlandt Park, our main program is our flagship program of the summer internships. So like I said, the first couple years actually, all they did was pick up garbage. And now we've evolved to what we call them our water and trails crew. So they help to maintain the 30+ miles of hiking trails in the park. And they also help to take care of Van Cortlandt Lake and Tibbetts Brook through water quality monitoring. And in the canoe there, that's aquatic water chestnut, which is an invasive. So they go out onto the lake in the canoes and pull the plants out and bring them out of the lake. So we do projects like that, and the interns work with us. We hire, it depends on the year, but between 10 and 15 each summer, and they work for 7 weeks. And then as part of that program, we've also expanded to have a Garden to Market internship. So we do have a small garden and compost site in the park, so they maintain that. And they also hold a weekly market, farmers market. We actually do 2 markets, one at Amalgamated Houses and one in front of Mosholu Montefiore Community Center, where we sell, produce to the community and talk about eating healthy and connecting the park to the vegetables. We also do a school year internship. We started that program in 1996. We partner with the Riverdale Neighborhood House on that. And this year and previous year, the interns focused all on Tibbetts Brook and did projects around Tibbetts Brook and Van Cortlandt Lake. We do free school programs. This is definitely our most popular program. We serve over 2,000 kids a year. And our idea is we want to bring kids into the park, get them excited about the park. They go home, they tell their parents, and then they can get their parents involved too. Because we really do believe that people will help maintain the park once they fall in love with the park. And this is a way to really introduce a lot of people to the park and all it has to offer. And then we do volunteer and stewardship programs. So a lot of times, spring and fall, we have weekend volunteer events so people can help us with forest, trail, wetland, garden restoration projects. And then we also do ongoing crews. So during the summer, once a week, we have a crew that works on our garden. We also do weekly water quality monitoring that volunteers can join us for. And then we have a once-a-month trails crew, and they can do projects like the first one, they built a little boardwalk. And then we do teacher workshops too, and the teachers actually can get what's called P credit, which they need in order to advance to get I think it's to get a raise within the school system. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but they need it. So our idea is to introduce teachers and have them get excited about the park to want to bring their kids back, or if they can't bring their kids to the park, they can bring the park to the classroom. And then our newest program is our Tibbetts Brook Watershed Stewardship Program. And that is we're now doing bi-weekly water quality monitoring. We do macroinvertebrate studies to learn about the insects that are in the brook and the lake. And the idea for that is that we are able to monitor the lake to find potential sources of pollution, and we've actually have done that. We've actually found some in Yonkers and worked with the city of Yonkers to get those issues corrected to remove pollution from the brook, and which then flows into the lake. And then we do community programs. So as mentioned, we have the farmer's stand. We do hikes. Once a year, Canoe-mobile, which is what that is, comes to the park and brings their big wooden canoes to take people out. We worked this year, partnered for the first time with Village Community Rowing to do free rowboats on Fridays for 3 months. And we're hoping to do that again. And then we do our Hacktoberfest. And then we also advocate for the park, and we help. I guess Councilman Cohen mentioned that he provides funding for the park, so we go and ask him for funding and help secure things like that. We have our Coalition for Daylighting Tibbetts Brook. We're trying to remove the water from the sewer and have it daylit. We've advocated for funding for projects such as there's going to be a new entrance at 261st Street. We're trying to find funding for the birding / I should say golfing bridge. And we helped advocate for the Parks Without Borders project in the park. And then those are the Grand Central stones in the park. We actually just had a project where we got them cleaned because they had years worth of graffiti on them. So we got all the graffiti removed, so now you can see that those 13 stones out there are actually different types of stone. So last year, we had several accomplishments. We worked with about 6,400 people, had about 1,500 volunteers, 2,200 students. We had 10 interns for our school year summer internship program for the youth market. We completed our first full year of water quality monitoring, and we got 22 organizations and elected officials to sign on to our Coalition for Daylighting. Just to give you an idea how much funding we raise, this is funding that we raise strictly for the Friends of Van Cortlandt Park. It doesn't include all of the capital funding that we help to raise. So we were just shy of 400,000 last year. So vast majority, over 50% of our funding comes from foundations. So that's through grant writing. This year, we're seeing a trend where we're starting to get more and more government funding, which is partly thanks to the councilman who's increased the discretionary grants that the Friends receives. But we also, this upcoming year, we have EPA money, and we have DEC money also. So that number is going to jump up greatly next year. And then we do get a lot of individual support, which we are extremely grateful for, because the individual support is really what helps with general operating cost. And that's one of the things to remember when you're starting a Friends of group like foundation money. They love to give money for programs, which is wonderful. But if I can't pay the rent, I can't do the programs. So that general operating support that we get from individuals really helps with that. And then the breakdown of it, the vast majority goes towards the programs, and that includes the staff to run the programs. And then, unfortunately, you do have to spend money on fundraising, so a good chunk of it goes towards fundraising also. And then I guess we'll do questions at the end, right, Bob? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. So from the oldest neighborhood group, I think we're going to the youngest, or certainly one of the youngest. The next panelist, the next speaker, is Debra Travis, who founded the Jerome Park Friends and Neighbors. This is the area around the reservoir, Fort Independence Park, and the area right around the Jerome Park Reservoir in Kingsbridge Heights. And Debra will talk about her group. So welcome, Debra.
So I'm Debra Travis. I'm the organizer, chief cook, and dishwasher of the Jerome Park Friends and Neighbors. We started probably just before Memorial Day this year. So we're not quite one yet, although I'm now having a fundraising or at least a little party idea for what we should do next spring. For what our goal is really just to take care of the plantings around Jerome Park. And we decided that the best place to start was really at Fort Independence. Currently, we spent the whole summer. We meet every Sunday from 9 o'clock in the morning until noon. Every Sunday all summer long, and then into September and October, weeding, raking, and mulching all of the existing planting beds that were in Fort Independence. The lucky thing for us is that Fort Independence was actually already kind of beautifully planted. That several years ago, a lot of money and hard work was put into putting these planting beds in and designing what's a really lovely public space. But because I really think a lot of it is lack of funding, that the space wasn't getting tended. Like the actual planting beds were becoming overgrown with weed trees. Fort Independence Park has beautiful old oak trees, which are really great, except they love to make baby oak trees by the thousands. And so I did not realize when I embarked on this that I was going to kill a lot more plants than I was actually going to save, because I've killed many, many trees this summer, and I've come to admit that. And they're all very little. So the planting beds were filled with small little baby sap little oak trees, just weed trees, and just 2 or 3 years worth of the leaves from these trees. In addition to all of that, so that was kind of taking care of smothering some of the smaller plantings that had been put there. But then in addition, there are vines and stuff that had gotten in and were smothering trees, which, it's really hard to get a tree growing and happy and healthy in the city. The kids may or may not want to harm it, or whatever. It's a city, and so when you got a beautiful, healthy tree, it's really hard to see the vines and stuff slowly taking over and overgrowing it. And so we are actually fairly new to the neighborhood, and so I moved in about a year and a half before I started my project, and I kind of staked out the garden and was watching what was happening to try to understand it. So that was kind of that was where I started, and so we started with just 3 people. Me, my wife, and somebody I found at the community board who was like, oh yeah, Fort Independence Park, yes, let's do it, right? We now have 50 people on our email list. We've got about 60 people who follow us on Facebook. We've got 4 core people who come out every Sunday. One went off and got this really great thing called the Extractigator, which pulls weed trees. That's what it does. They bought it in Canada and got it specifically for our project. And we have had 3 or 4 times this summer, we had like 14, 15 people at a time on a weekend, and it was pretty great. So those were really pretty wonderful moments. So far, we've removed about 160 bags of debris. We've laid 6 yards of mulch. We've planted 200 daffodil bulbs since Memorial Day. So that's where we're at. And we've cleaned or cleared from the weeds and stuff almost all of the planting beds. We've got like 3 very large ones that we're really going to tack next year, just as we're early in the spring to try to get control of it. But then we should actually be on top of the maintenance of Fort Independence. So we're looking forward to kind of getting to that milestone where we're just simply catching up on last year's weed trees and last year's leaves. So how did we start? So the first thing I did, I just wanted to really kind of highlight some things that I felt like really worked and really helped when we were setting up. The first thing I thought was really great that was just talking to everybody. Like I learned so much from just talking to, like I'd be doing my laundry and I'd be like, so what do you know about Fort Independence? Like what happened? Like why are there weeds there? Do you know like if there's a gardening group? And that I would have all these interesting conversations because everybody knew, like it's the Bronx, it's really wonderful. Everybody knows what's going on. They just all have different views of it. And so, and also I would come to the community board meetings. That was really key because I met Leenda at a community board meeting, I met Bob, I met Christina, I met everybody. And then I also met one of the early boosters for the group who was like, no, you should do it. You should really just start, tending to the parks. Let's just work with Partnership for Parks and figure it out. I met Tony. And so going to the community board meetings was really huge. Finding and looking to who the other groups are already who are in the neighborhood. Around Fort Independence, there's a long history of activism. And so there were already groups that were actively doing things, but they were just doing different things, or they had gotten fatigued. And so they were just like, I can't deal with the plantings. I know the plantings, the city, the parks, the universe, God, the whole thing, right? But they still cared very much, and they were huge resources. I was able to get like the original planting plan, like what plants were actually put in the park originally, like 4 years ago or whatever. I was able to get that stuff. I was able to kind of connect with all sorts of folks who knew the history. The other 2 things I think were really helpful were just starting with really specific goals that were suited to what you're good at. I'm not like the best person necessarily for like going out and asking people for money or organizing children's parties or like a tour. Like that, those kinds of things are not my thing. Like just like other people are really good at it, but that wasn't my thing. My thing is like I can get up at 9 o'clock every morning on a Sunday and go weed. I can do that pretty consistently. I can ask other people if they want to do that too. I can look like I'm having fun the whole time. And that actually feeds into the last bit, which is make sure you're enjoying yourself. Because when you're starting it, you can kind of do anything. Like we were originally like, should we have a community garden? Or should we have like events? Like maybe we could host a movie. All of those things. Hosting a movie would be really cool, and I would love eventually if we could do something like that. But I'm not very good at it. And so I was like, maybe we shouldn't host a movie because I'm going to be the person that has to set it up, promote it, plan it, do the whole thing. And I'm not very good at that piece. So let's first like establish ourselves. So because it's me doing a lot of the pushing initially, the group mostly is doing the thing that I really love, which at 9 o'clock in the morning on a weekend, it's so beautiful in the park. It's just quiet. There's hawks. It's really nice. I love it. And so there were some weekends where there were like 14 people, and that was excellent. And then there were other weekends where it was me. And that was excellent too. I mean, it wasn't excellent, it was okay. But, it was fine. I could keep going. And the persisting is the piece, just to go back to this persistence. So those are my tips. What did I learn? I met a lot of people in the neighborhood. So I thought I met a bunch of people at the beginning, but I met people like even more throughout. People who wanted to know what the hell I was doing in the park. Why was I doing this? This is the park's work. And that was a good question for me to kind of think about over the summer and to learn more about and to get better at answering. I met the people who are very involved and committed to the dog run. I met the people who are really involved and committed to the basketball courts, and they organize stuff for the people there. I met all of the parks team who are great, and got to learn kind of how they are coordinated and all of that. I got to learn where the holes were, like why were the planting beds overgrown, and that the answer is different for Ford Independence than it is for along Sedgwick. And I learned a lot about how people don't even know how to rake. I grew up in like northern Michigan. I'm a child of a farmer. The thought that you wouldn't just know how to rake was really surprising. And I had to teach folks that, and that was really cool, because that's a really cool thing to know. It's a very simple thing, but it's a very cool thing. And also just basic plant identification. There's only like 13 plants in the garden, other than the ones that we did not plant there. And that a lot of folks just learning basic things about leaves and flowers, it changes what you see. And I feel like as we go along, we learn, like the folks learn more and more and more about what's actually planted there, and then it's cool. I mean, the daffodil bulbs will come up in the spring, and we've got kids, we got like 14 kids who are like hoping and looking forward to it. And so God help, I hope they all come up, you know. But that was really cool. I learned where the holes were, learned what people really would benefit from. And the Corps has begun to form of our volunteers, and each person brings something to it. And so next year it's really just going to be about kind of continuing to coordinate with the city, just getting more people involved, like getting a little bit more visible. That was one thing I think I could really work on, like getting a little sign so that when people see us in the planting beds, they don't think we're just stealing the plants, which, you know. And so, we've had T-shirts, but then the T-shirts got dirty, you know, the logistics. And then just we're hoping to move beyond just weeding to restoring some of the planting beds where the plants have died. There's whole sections where there's just nothing, where you look at the original plan, and there was stuff. And there are folks who remember what it used to look like, and they're like, there was stuff. There's like nothing. So maybe in the spring it'll come up. I'm hoping there's something. I mean, spring is for hope. But that is also our hope, is to begin to kind of replot, put things back in and work with the parks to get things looking nice again. So that is my presentation. That's my group. And I can answer questions at the end, right? Yeah. Okay.
Debra, thanks. That was terrific. Before I introduce the next speaker, I did want to acknowledge somebody I forgot to acknowledge earlier, and that's Tony Rosa, who is the parks manager for our area for Community Board 8 for Riverdale and Kingsbridge. Whenever the Community Board has a complaint about a park, or whenever somebody complains to the Community Board about a park, we don't actually fix it. Tony fixes it. We call on him, and he makes sure it gets done. So, there's a whole crew in the Parks Department that really looks after our local parks. So the next speaker is Daniel Reynolds, who founded the Stewards of Henry Hudson Park. And he's going to talk a little bit about his group and what they do and show us some pictures. Dan?
Okay, good. Well, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's already evening. I'm Dan Reynolds. I'm the founder of the Stewards of Henry Hudson Park. Thank you very much for inviting me here tonight to talk about how we started our group and how we sustain the activities. We're a relatively young group too. We've only been around for a couple of years, and we're still working on sustaining our efforts. So now, being a founder of a group and seeing the work that our volunteers do in the landscape and in the community too, every day when I'm at my neighborhood park is extremely fulfilling. So I'm really happy to spend some time to talk to you about how we started our group and what we do to sustain it. Okay, so who are the Stewards of Henry Hudson Park? We're a volunteer group that was founded in April 2015. We meet every Saturday between 8 o'clock and 12 p.m., well, almost every Saturday. The group consists of 6 core members, and they work alongside volunteers and supervise volunteers in a broad range of activities. We mulch, we weed, we clean, we do basic park maintenance. We also do a lot of planting. We planted thousands of bulbs so far in the last 2 years. So we definitely work with a lot of students. We work with neighbors, passers-by, and we work with larger community groups. We have a very good relationship with Manhattan College, Bronx Science Key Club work with us quite a lot, and they do great work in the park. We have a very clear mission. The role of our group is very much to mobilize community resources in order to support parks maintenance in the park. With that vision, I mean, being very clear, I think that is a lesson that is really important for groups that are starting to very much carefully consider the role and the priorities of the group that you intend to found, and make sure that they're in line with the Parks Department, who has to maintain the place, and the community that you'll be serving. I think that's really important. Recognize this poster, Leenda? Mm-hmm. Okay, so anyway, I frequently visit the park. I live in the neighborhood, and I'm party to many neighborly discussions about park maintenance, about features in the park, etc., etc. A lot of people have a lot of suggestions to things that need to be done in the park, but nobody was really stepping forward and actually doing anything with this. So I listened to this a lot. A number of people finally would step forward and say, well, you know, if it was a volunteer group, we would definitely do something here, but there isn't, so we won't. So I decided to found that volunteer group and see if people would come out and see if they would deal with some of the issues that they brought to my attention. I contacted our Partnership for Parks outreach coordinator, Leenda Bonilla. We had a long discussion about the activities that I'd planned for the group. They were approved by the Parks Department. That's really important. And we were ready to take the group from paper to actually putting volunteers out in the field. It's a great feeling when you have your first projects, and you kind of take a moment from the bedlam and you look around you, and all of the work is being done with new volunteers. People are walking past, and they're expressing a lot of interest. It's extremely fulfilling. Partnership for Parks, they helped me to prepare every aspect of my first project. They supplied materials, tools, etc. And they're also very good in promoting our project. It's always a problem for first groups when they're starting out, just getting the word out there. This wonderful poster was designed by Leenda. It worked great just putting that at the entrance to the park. And also Partnership for Parks can list your projects on the park's website, and that's always been a great source of promotion for us. I should mention that our first projects were all focused on very high visibility areas, so that we received as much attention as possible from the community in those opening stages. Okay, so here is the listing of our events on the park's website. The Partnership for Parks does an excellent job of promoting our projects, and often this will draw really large groups of people, students, volunteers, community groups, large community groups. Although the Stewards of Henry Hudson Park is not, it's not driven primarily by large episodic groups and large episodic projects. We meet every single Saturday. It is really important to get out there and get these relationships with these large community groups. They really help you to gain momentum with the group. And you can see the Trust for Public Land there, and a crew from Manhattan College. This is a group that we've worked with quite a lot. It's a great group. They work really hard. That's Missy the dog. That's our mascot, right, Mark? So we've got an excellent relationship with this group. This is the Gamma Theta graduate chapter of a Mandad Sigma Lambda Alpha. You you see, interestingly, that working with a large community group can be useful in terms of promotion. They're promoting our project, our volunteer project, through their own organization and through their own contacts. That can be really useful. Involving these larger groups in the big projects, the high visibility projects, can promote all of the groups involved, and that's a good synergy on which to base a long-term relationship. Bronx Science Key Club has worked with our group frequently. This planting of 2 new garden beds is a great project to involve them with. It was very challenging. The students learnt a lot of new skills and seemed to enjoy the work. It's really important to diversify the work that you're doing with these volunteer projects in order to keep people engaged. Adding an educational element can also be extremely useful. I think one of the really big challenges as a volunteer group with a commitment to parks maintenance is to balance that commitment with the need to engage volunteers. At this time of year particularly, we can spend the entire time just picking up leaves, and we have done sometimes, but it's really nice to have an high profile, high visibility event that has diversified work. Okay. So there's a group from Manhattan College helping us out. It looks like backbreaking work, right? Like it was, that's why they were doing it. So Mark can tell you. So working on projects that make a big impact is also really good for promoting the group. This is Manhattan College is helping us here. We're moving forward with a long-term project that we have to redesign and replant the 4 formal landscapes in the center of the park. They're in the center of the park. They're also the center of the community. This is the place where lots of neighbors and community members meet to talk and hang out, and talk about why we need more volunteers in the park, etc. Yeah, so our volunteers are committed to realizing this exciting plan. And the important aspect of this plan is that the volunteers actually helped devise the plan. They contributed to this plan, and so there's a real sense of being invested in this work. It is a long-term project, but it's very diverse, the labor that we've been doing here. You see we installed a new concrete paver path there. That was a learning experience for everybody. A new planter, and this is the first stage of our formal garden. It kind of suits the environment. If any of you have been to Henry Hudson Park with the statue, the architecture, it's very formal. You see one of our signs there. It's having a long-term goal and long-term projects is really important for a volunteer group. It's great promotion. People see this kind of moving along, this project moving along, and often people will want to help. Our social media presence has really helped us to stay in contact with our volunteers and the groups and help promote the work that we're doing. This is great, really, because I'm pretty disorganized with mailing lists, but volunteers will share their contact information with you, join your Facebook page, and they'll visit your page, and you'll see people that haven't been out for a couple of years, maybe they left the area, engaging with the group, commenting on the work that's been going on. There's a long-term relationship there. It doesn't just end with just volunteering in the park. You can see also that Facebook is great for posting our events. This is one of our daffodil planting events that we planted. There's all sorts of potential tools to use that we haven't even explored yet. Website is another important aspect of a group looking for promotion. It allows us to further develop our online interaction with the community. And also, this format allows us a more elaborate, a more detailed narrative around the group and around the work that we do. So this is where I'll direct people that are interested in our work to this website so they can read a little bit more in detail. It's also a very useful feature of this website is that this will process our donations. That's been very useful in the past. It doesn't end with online promotion, though. Offline promotion is very important. I'm sorry to keep bringing this poster up, but they're actually very, very effective. You know, the Stewards of Hudson Park have had great success promoting the group by stationing these laminated posters and business card dispensers at the entrance to the park. Reaching out to the local press can also be a good idea, especially when you're getting started. They're very receptive to volunteer groups working in parks. We're receptive to the Stewards of Hudson too. We were in the Riverdale Press a couple of times. And never underestimate the value of a T-shirt. This is a lesson that we have learned. Developing a logo for the group and providing T-shirts, hats, and other promotional wear, it really serves to generate a sense of identity and a sense of being part of a team. Just these simple articles here, our basic uniform, really help to establish that, and they help to ensure that the community is very much aware of your presence in the park, not just a lot of people doing some activities. It's a great conversation starter. We find that more people will come and talk to us. They probably had a question for a while, but they didn't know who to talk to. They will come straight to you and talk when you're wearing that T-shirt. So we are a young group, and we're learning too about our financial, sustaining ourselves financially. The Stewards of Hudson Park funded our high-profile projects with a capacity fund grant from the City Parks Foundation, as well as a neighborhood grant from the Citizens Committee for New York. These were really useful in getting us started. You can see the sign from the Citizens Committee of New York there. They're awardees. But that was a great source of promotion for us. Also, community members have been very helpful in contributing. There's a lot of people that can't necessarily contribute their time or can't necessarily contribute the physical effort of being here, but they're very happy to contribute financially. So they've really helped us too. It's absolutely imperative. It's obvious, but fundraising is absolutely imperative. In order to sustain a group's activities over a longer period, this is something that has to be considered. Fundraising can help you to promote your group. So I mentioned that we need long-term objectives as having a volunteer group, and we have long-term objectives. And I want to just conclude by sharing with you some of our New Year's resolutions coming up for this year. They're not the same as the previous years, almost the same, but we really want to expand our fundraising activities so we can expand our work in the park. You can see that our volunteers, they do a great job with very limited funding. I think that with a better funding structure, we could do amazing work in the park. This is the Boy Scouts, I believe, and some of our core volunteers working on, this was a bare patch. You see the beginning garden by the guardrail. It looks a lot better the following spring. We really made an impact there. So I think there's a lot of potential. We want to expand our work in the park so that we can expand our group. The two are kind of tied together. We're committed to the maintenance of the park, extending the work that we're doing there, assuming more of a role in that maintenance, even if that includes increasing our events, either having an event in the week or even a Sunday. That is something that we're looking at. We also want to develop our existing relationship with the community. We talk with a lot of the community members who stop by all of the time when we're doing the work. But Leenda, you had a great idea, having a visioning activity in the park. We just need to make sure that we're still in touch with what people wanted from us when they embraced the group to start with. So we want to make sure we're moving in the right direction. Part of that visioning will include looking at additional programming opportunities for the park. We would really like to extend the programming of the park, increase the number of visitors that are coming in, and enrich their experience as members of the community. That's it.
So I think Dan has pretty much introduced our next speaker, Leenda Bonilla from the Partnership for Parks. She works with local parks groups, as Dan has observed with his group, and she's going to come up and tell us about what she does, how she works with local friends of groups, and exactly what services she can provide to some of the local groups. Leenda?
Good evening, everyone. So I am your last speaker, so I will try to be as concise but thorough with you. So welcome. I'm Leenda Bonilla. I am your Senior Outreach Coordinator for a program known as Partnerships for Parks. And as your outreach coordinator, my job is connecting individuals, groups, organizations to activate and amplify their parks and green spaces. So I'm just going to present to you tonight an overview of what my program does at Parks, which is a private-public program within New York City Parks, and other resources where you can actually learn and access to do other types of volunteership or just have fun. So, I just want to note Tibbetts Tail up there is another great group in Community Board 8. So, at Partnerships for Parks, as you've seen tonight, you see park groups of all different levels. And as you know, in the Bronx, no parks are the same. Every park is unique. Every green space is unique. And these are 3 examples right here that are. At Partnerships for Parks, we provide trainings, beautification, it's my park projects, staff support, and community visioning, and along with grants. And if we can't give you the grant, we'll help you resources to get you that money for that idea and vision that you have. In short, trainings, we have Parks Academy workshops based in the Bronx, and ideally, we'd like to move our workshops throughout the Bronx so that everybody can access it. So we usually project it. We actually held most of our workshops along the concourse, so it'll start up at Hostos, and it could end by Lehman College. So, but those are things that I usually try to send out within our monthly e-blast. But it's the holiday time, so everybody's taking a break. And this is like the ultimate goal. Actually, it's for all levels as well. It's Partnerships Academy, and this is for individuals who want to know more, who want to become a super activator or a super, a community member, parks group that wants to really help their group, whether emerging or established, to get them that little push. And topics include like time management, branding, working with New York City Parks, learning to work with elected officials, networking, and event planning as a few examples of what this 6-month workshop does. And there's a party at the end. So, as you can see, beautification. It's my park projects. It's year-round. As you can see, these are all Bronx folks. These are all Bronx picks. And you can see summer, winter, spring, and fall. Everybody has a project. Everybody has an idea and vision to activate and amplify their green spaces. So as you know, with formalization process, we used to do a pen and paper process, but with technology, we actually have to do online submissions, but we always are available a phone call away or an email away if you have difficulty signing up for your project. And projects are usually, if you have an idea to do something, like for example, in January, your deadline to submit an application is December 1st. So that's a little, but in addition to that, you want to have an idea, just as everybody on the panel has mentioned. What's your goal? What's your vision to do in this project? And once I receive your application, I usually review with the park manager, you have Tony Rosa here, and park supervisor Albert Ayala, who have been really great with working with unique spaces that we do have in Community Board 8. We have hybrid spaces that are passive recreation with natural areas, you have woods. It's just amazing what CB8 has. And then once your application is approved, you know, then I will work with you to coordinate. It's like, how many people do you have? It could be a party of 4 up to a party of 14. Party of 40, we gotta talk. But usually most emerging groups will be humble volume of 4 to 12 people. And then I usually coordinate with the district to bring the tools, and I usually show up. If I'm not, you know, sometimes I have days where I have 4 or 5 projects running along, so I'll be like, hi, you're doing great, and I'll be running around. But I love that. I love seeing what's happening with all the community groups that are doing their projects. And then once you're done, the district staff comes by and picks up the tools, and that's it. And then you have groups that are recurring, such as Henry Hudson and Jerome Park fans, and you have once a season, because everybody has a different view or idea of how they want to sustain their parks and green spaces. Another example, this is not me, this is actually another division within my program that deals specifically with corporate groups who want to activate your parks and green spaces. And that's usually, that's coordinated with that division. And that's usually in the end where things, it's usually mostly springtime when that occurs. And as you see right here, this is an image of Henry Hudson Park that's having a corporate volunteer project that occurred, I think, 2 years ago, and it was really wonderful, as you could see. Moving along, staff support. That is the key thing that we provide here at Partnerships for Parks to help groups really, really get moving. I'm here to hear what your interests are, to understand what your needs are, to see what's feasible and what's doable, and what can be considered as an alternative if the original ideal is not possible. And as the agency liaison, I'm here to represent the parks, represent the borough office, the commissioner, and all the things that we try to promote with our parks and green spaces, which is, you know, that it belongs to us, and that it works. We're here to have everybody understand that public space is everyone's space. Also, with that said, arts and community programming is possible, and that can be complementary with a series of It's My Park events that can lead up to a big arts. I know there's been, Friends of Soundview Park has their Summerfest or movie night, and you know, just having days that advocates for park advocacy and fundraising, as Dan mentioned, that's key as well. Community visioning. That is a level, actually this is for all levels, but these that you see here specifically are groups that I have worked with that have reached a level that they know their purpose, they know the goals that they want to have with their spaces. And we provide a service to help groups create visioning, community visionings. It could be something as small as a survey or as big as having, if you see right there, the tabler that has all the stickers, you know, you have, everything's customized. Everything is unique because we spoke to community members. The community, the emerging group wants, you know, has spoken with community members to see what the ideal is. And it's out of the box. You're thinking out of the box of how to engage people to rethink their green and park spaces. And then capacity fund grants. A key thing that we do here is to help park groups to reach the next level, and we know that money is a big, big help. So with Partnerships for Parks, we offer the capacity grant, I believe, 2 times during the year. It was originally 3, but with funding streams being that they are, we actually will be cycling down to 2 key times of the year, which will be announced shortly. And the purpose of those grants is to do what they say, to help build emerging groups, to help establish groups with other big ideas that they want to do, also to help build identity, such as having a hard, you know, doing, I'm trying to think, the nice vinyl sign, establishing a logo, or having a website that really connects you with your audience or your neighbors. So, other suggestions, well, since Community Board 8, the topography of Community Board 8 is so unique. I'd also like to mention other park groups, because as much as I love my job, I can't do everything. So I want to share with you other divisions within parks that really can help you if I can. And so, for example, New York City Park Stewardship is the group that you want to work with to deal with trees. Street tree care, invasive species removal, and they also have a special program known as Super Stewards. All this information I can provide, for you, but I have it up here now if you want to use your camera to take a picture. And moving along, Green Thumb is what it is, gardening, creating a community garden. And they have wonderful workshops. They have an annual big workshop or conference that they hold every year in spring. And they teach you how to start a garden group. New York Tree Trust, that's another unique program that works with trees that protect, serve, and enhance New York City street parks, street trees, parks, trees and parks, and forest trees. So that's another level of engagement. And you have, of course, the Natural Resource Group. This group will help you, or those are interested in volunteering to protect forests, woodland, freshwater, wetland, and other valuable ecosystems that we have here. This is a wonderful opportunity to learn that other side of the Bronx that we hardly get to experience. And, like I said, there's something for everybody here in the Bronx, in Greenwise. And then for those who are interested in programming, to have programs that you are being consistent with your It's My Park events and doing your cleanups, and you want to, build community with public programs. We have other groups such as the Wildlife Unit, the Urban Park Service. They host urban park ranger guided tours and camping. Recreation is a huge division in the Bronx, and they have free, accessible public programs for you. It's all about getting onto the website and signing up or contacting me, and I could guide you through on how to sign up for it. So things such as Shape Up, the Playmobile, the Fitness Mobile, movie nights under the stars, and also coordinating special events and field events. I'm here for you to help you how to get that, to actually coordinate and organize that. Other organizations to connect with, to consider, City Parks Foundation. That's the other half of Partnerships for Parks. And they do summer stage, but they also do educational classes, as well as the Puppet Mobile. And I think plethora of other things. New Yorkers for Parks, that's a unique organization. That's like the people's ultimate partnerships for parks, but that's like behind the scenes. You really get to know, or you work with this unique organization to help you understand, to learn more about your park spaces. And they have a great guide. If you go onto ny4p.org, you can actually query up your district, and they give you a wonderful map that'll help you. Bronx Council of the Arts is also a wonderful organization founded in 1969 that has a program known as the Community Arts Grant. And they also work with doing re-grants for artists and communities that want to do public art and cultural events. And they're wonderful to work with because they need to find a spot. And they have a spot and they have a group to work with. This is a wonderful hybrid event that you could host a concert in a green space, as long as you let me know, and I can help you guys. And for those who want to help those in need, which are I'm a big animal person, so I had to just list Neighborhood Cats, neighborhoodcats.org, which is a wonderful organization to help you, help those cats that don't have a home, and you could help them set up or help rescue them. And then finally, Citizens Committee for New York City, citizensnyc.org, is another amazing grant source for emerging groups that do not have a 501(c)(3) status and just need that push to get their group, to get that event done, to get that, I don't know, I'm trying to think. It's like, for me, it's like I've worked with so many amazing groups, And we've done so many variations, whether it is to do 5 It's My Park events and do a big cultural event to celebrate it, or to create a logo that they could just keep promoting themselves wherever I end up, I don't know. But as you know, these are examples of organizations that can help you. And so finally, I can't do it alone. I have other amazing colleagues that are also outreach coordinators, but I am your immediate outreach coordinator for your community board. So I have here listed myself with my contact information. Carlos Acosta is the other outreach coordinator that works for community boards 1, 4, 5, 6, and Ismael Guzman, community boards 3, 10, 11, 12. And we're here for you. We're here to hear your concerns, your interests, and help you activate and amplify your spaces. Thank you. And I actually want to say, being consistent, that's just the key thing. And knowing your purpose, and just do what you love. Because as Debbie said, she loves planting and she loves just digging up the plant beds. You have to love her for that. And Dan is really interested with just making that park look as green as possible. And there's other members in this room, other groups that I see that I really hold dearly. Tibbetts Tail, Friends of Tibbetts Tail, Stewards of Lower Brust Park. All of you have been really amazing in just making those spaces, you know, touched by community and letting other community knows that you are there, that there are people there, and it's not just park folks. You work with the park folks. So thank you so much.
We're going to get a microphone up on the table and get a microphone around to all the folks who are out here so that you can ask some questions. I just wanted to say, Community Board 8 Parks and Recreation Committee, every spring we do an It's My Park event, and we work with Leenda, and she's a pleasure to work with. She's terrific, she really is, as you could tell from the presentation. So if you have your 2018 calendar, take a look at May sometime, some Saturday in May. Next year we'll be picking a local park and we'll be doing a project again. Of course, all that information will go out from the community board office well in advance. But thank you to all 4 of our panelists. That was terrific, wasn't it?
I also have a job. I would say that the area of Riverdale area in Hudson Park is, I think there's such potential to develop those green spaces in that area. It's a beautiful area. There's a lot of community interest in those parks. A lot of people that are prepared to give resources too to support those missions. Henry Hudson Park, for me personally, it's the heart of the community that I moved to. I live in a commuter band. This is the one place where people come together, walk the dogs, and actually kind of interact with each other. Very strong sense of community there, and I felt that we could do better to promote that, both through running the volunteer group, because through having projects that sponsor community involvement, you're bringing interaction, you're creating interaction in the community. But also, at the heart of the park itself is the landscapes, and if we work to make those green spaces the best in the city, then that will also help promote community interaction.
And I'd like to know with the corporate volunteers, that's actually through our other division that deals specifically with corporate volunteers, corporations that reach out to partnerships to ask to volunteer at certain parks. And OCs in consultation with the park manager and the borough, we recommend a list of parks. And so I was cheering on, and Henry Hudson Park got it.
That part of the question, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
That's true. We worked with Carabas a couple of times there. They brought in some real energy into the park. It's really nice to see how the neighbors react to that too. To see all these new people there, to see that the park is getting that attention. It really is. Really makes people enthused.
Hello. Thank you for joining us today. I had a question between, you were saying volunteer group and 501c3. Is there a difference between the two? Is one more kind of an extension of the Parks Department? And then I'm just curious what the actual difference between those two names that you were saying.
So the Friends of Van Park are 501c3, which is a status, a federal status that you need in order to fundraise. So in order for us to take donations that people can write off on their taxes, you need to be a 501c3 organization. And you can still be a volunteer organization that is a 501c3. Just because you're a 501c3 doesn't mean that you necessarily have to have paid staff. You just can. So organizations like I'm not sure how everyone's model works is a little different, but a lot of times in order to receive donations, you do have to be a 501c3 or get what's called a fiscal conduit. So another organization that is a 501c3 can say, build the money basically to make sure that it's used appropriately.
And Partnerships for Parks is a fiscal sponsor for our capacity grantees who win grants with us, or actually if they want a grant from another organization, they can use us as a fiscal sponsor as well, and we can help them navigate the funding stream for them.
So you don't necessarily have to be a 501c3 in order to do a volunteer group.
Absolutely.
But then how do you fundraise if you're not a 501c3? Is it just
You would
knocking
have
on
to use a
people's
fiscal
doors?
conduit, so you would have to use Partnerships for Parks. So when we started the first, it was the first like 15 years almost that we were under the City Parks Foundation. They were our fiscal conduit, and then finally we're like, wait, you guys are raising too much money to go out and do this on your own. So we, went through the process of setting our own bank accounts and all of that, so we could do it.
And just to toss in, our group doesn't do any fundraising because we're really not at that stage yet. Like we're still really establishing what our core is and what our goals are and who we are and who our core members are. And so it's a little bit early. Like you don't have to have a bunch of fundraising and money in order to start doing what you want to do. Partnerships with Parks has been great with providing us with tools and trowels, and got daffodil bulbs donated, mulch has been donated by the city. Like all of those things have been provided. So we really just needed to have folks who showed up, and we just need to go out and find those folks.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi. My name is Chris with Stewards of Lower West Park. Leenda and Dan, thank you so much for your help. You guys have been great. My question to the panel is how do you extend this outreach into something that's ongoing? I'm not a young man, and neither is my wife, and the few people that come out to our events twice a year. And how does one create an ongoing enterprise that extends into something like Stewards of Lower West Park that's taken up by the next generation? And it could be a 501c3, it could be something else. We have an outreach to Manhattan College as well, the Green Club there, it's fantastic. This year we had an entire group came out from a Taekwondo club. They saw it online, and we must have had 20 people come out from the Taekwondo club. But it feels to me like it's an ad hoc thing, And so when I get thrown under the bus, who's going to carry it on is my question. Well, no, I know that. But you get my point. How does one carry this on to future generations like we've seen this great testimony so far?
Well, I would say that I think one of the strengths of our group, actually, too, I'm not sure how often you guys meet, but meeting every week is really important. The more you utilize your volunteers, the more you engage them, the more you contribute to their motivation. You start to see people that understand that the commitment is ongoing, rather than episodic, just the episodic project. But they can be useful too. Share your contact information. and really work with the relationship with those volunteers and inspire them. They'll join your Facebook page, your social media page. Before you know it, they'll be out again. That starts to getting momentum. That is at least what we try.
Sounds good.
I mean, there's a point where it starts to have a bit of momentum on its own, because people get enthusiastic. I mean, in the same way that I was looking forward to each Sunday because I was looking forward to making a bit of a difference. I didn't know who I was going to meet, nor if anything could happen. And then also, there were people that would come, and so you make these friends that you see every Saturday, every Sunday, and you do this task with them. There's something just really reviving about that. And I guess we hope that over the last 25 years, because we find some folks, we've got multiple people where it matters a lot to them. And so if one of them falls under a bus, the other people, plant a tree for them. And then the park project keeps going.
So do you suggest a formal enterprise, such as this gentleman said, 501c3, or just an ad hoc thing? What would facilitate this?
No, I think I'd like to just emphasize every group is unique, and it also depends where you live. I know that Lower West Park is directly across the street from Manhattan College, which has a high volume of young students. However, I think for Lower West, I think it's a matter of identifying and creating a label to let people know that this park is being overseen by the stewards of Lower West Park. So I will be working with you to help you create that, just build that flyer. And it's also it's also working with your capacity. It's just doing the work, and I know a couple of core members in your building. It's about understanding what are your limitations and what can you do. You can't do recurring, but maybe you could do twice, maybe up the frequency instead of twice a year. You could do 3 times a year, and then with that, we could see how Lower West can tend to a public program where this event, co-hosted by the stewards of Lower West Park, and that's sort of a way you can start creating engagement with the local, not just the students, but around Lakewood, folks.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So Leenda, you can be a resource for advice based on the work you've done with many other groups throughout the Bronx. So if somebody has a group and they're a little bit concerned about, how do I keep it going? What if I don't show up next spring? They should really be talking to you and saying, here's my concern. What advice can you offer me?
Absolutely.
Great. David?
I'm a member of Leenda. I'm a member of Community Board 8 for about 3 years. I've been a member of this Parks Committee for more than 5 years. I live a block away from Henry Hudson Park. I live right next door to Mark. And yet, I had never heard of the Stewards until I happened to be walking by on a beautiful Saturday while they were working. And I was blown away by what they've done. It's just spectacular. But I'm just wondering what kind of outreach, rather than just merely having various websites where people who, one evening think, oh, tomorrow's a nice day, let me see what I can do in a park, is not as likely as if parks would do outreach to help these groups that are working so hard to let people in the community know that there is a stewards of, their friends of, etc. And it's really an open question for you, but I think that it really could help. I believe that a lot of our community would be willing to participate if they knew there was a need and there was a specific opportunity.
Well, David, I feel that the importance here is, in the case of Henry Hudson Park, flyers were key because it is a bi-level park, and you also have a close playground. That's why when Dan and I were working together, initially I was like, flyers are key. And also, as you know, flyers also age out. So it's about the consistency. Like, I created the flyer for him to just keep posting. And it's that kind of slow, organic process that happens. And eventually, when groups do get more advanced, they can afford to get a vinyl banner to keep permanently in the park with the consent of the park manager. And, you know, the sky's the limit at that point, and just knowing how to know what's acceptable with regards to advertising the group that's there existing. And I just say, I guess we gotta check out your banners and see what you have and what we need to fix.
Well, like, could parks do a seasonal, like spring and fall ad saying, here, you know, in the Riverdale Press, the Riverdale Review, a couple of others, here are some community parks organizations you might be interested in, but coming out of the Parks Department.
Yeah, starts in that's a really ideal kind of concept, but honestly, it's really about word of mouth. It's about the grassroots. It's about who on the ground, who lives next to the park. And it's that kind of word that really keeps the core group and builds the core group. And it's the emerging group and the established groups that's charged with showing that we're active, we're here. So I feel that the park, within our capacity of parks, we post the online events as a courtesy. We try to push it on our Partnership with Parks page as well. Because we know everybody's taking social media in various levels. But I feel that on the ground, just having our group members or just post flyers themselves, that's the key thing.
Leenda, you have a monthly e-newsletter that goes out, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So
I also, yes, and within that, that's like general updates about the borough, and also upcoming It's by Park events that
Right.
I blast out.
So somebody could just Google Partnership for Parks and find
It's
your
by Park
information.
event, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I add something, David? We listen to the community around us, and we are open to ideas. So if you have any ideas, better ideas about promoting offline, we really look forward to hearing them, because we're ready for that next stage.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and I think that there's also a space to have a really meaningful conversation about how the Parks Department is different than other city organizations, because other city organizations are autonomous. The sanitation team is going to pick up the garbage. They're not going to ask me to help them. The Parks team really seems to, the Parks Department wants us to engage with them. And then when they do that, then there's more money to help homeless people, there's more money to help people with opioid addiction, there's more money to do things in the community. Otherwise, if we can help the Parks Department do everything so that the parks don't go, begging. And so I do think that there's a space there where the Parks Department isn't treated as the special organization that it is. It doesn't think of itself, it doesn't promote itself in that way. I mean, I'll just say that as an outside observer. I do a lot of education in my part about why it is vital that we do the work that we do, and that it's not that we're just, the city is screwing us over. It's not that the Parks Department doesn't care, that kind of thing.
Yes.
I wanted to know, to be friends of, is that just for a city park? Or can a private entity be friends of? How does that actually work?
Well, I was just going to say, technically it could be a friends of or any park. It doesn't necessarily have to be a city park. To go through, like the Parks Department or through Leenda, you would have to be working with the city park. But I think this model would definitely work for other places too.
Do you have a specific park in mind?
We have a park not too far from us, but Givens Creek, but I think it's like a landmark, and I believe it's a city park, and it's not that far from us, but we also have a park within our complex, but that's private property. So we wanted to be able to source the funding that's available, because we are a 501c3. So we want to be able to get the funding. So I wanted to know, how do you bridge the two? I'm not from your community, but I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But we saw this on BronxNet,
Okay.
on channel 67, and so we wanted to come and we were very pleased that it was on BronxNet. So we wanted to be able to come and get some information.
Oh, well, first of all, thanks for coming. So this is like your apartment complex that has a private area in it. So that's not, of course, a city park, that's different. But if you have a 501c3, then you can do fundraising. You don't need to go through the Parks Department. You're equipped already to do that on your own, if that's the case.
We can do fundraising, but we want Parks Equity Initiative money.
That you might have a hard time.
Yeah.
And that's where, I wanted to see, how do you...
I mean, there's definitely other sources of funding out there. I would suggest going to the Foundation Center. They have an online thing, but you have to pay for that, and it's expensive. But if you go down to the Foundation Center, which is down by Union Square, you can access it for free, and on that you can look up foundations that provide funding, and you can look for ones that fund parks or green spaces.
Or non-city park green spaces, private gardens.
Commissioner?
I'd just like to be able to say that I know that this administration had looked at a parcel of property along Co-op City to develop, a public park, so to speak. So, and that is private property that probably they were donating, the Co-op City was donating to the city so the city can develop it into a park. So that is in discussions now to do that in that area. So if you don't know about it, your management organization, so that's something to share. Nice.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes. Yeah.
Hi. So how can people sign up to volunteer at a park near them, but they don't necessarily want to create a Friends of group, but they just want to volunteer? Is there room for that?
Absolutely. New York City Parks, we have a monthly calendar that is, you can just simply Google, It's My Park, and it'll either refer to the New York City Parks calendar website, and you can find out which park, it's in all 5 boroughs. You can pick which site you want to volunteer at, or partnershipsforparks.org. There's also a calendar of It's My Park events that happen there. And you could sign up as an individual volunteer, like I'm interested in volunteering here. And then you'll complete the form, and someone will get back to you and let you know what is available.
And what if there's a park close to you, but there's not a friends group? So how do you volunteer then? Just a one-time thing. How do you?
That I love. Well, honestly,
But it comes back to, I think, what you were talking about earlier, where until somebody organizes a friend group, like you, then there's like all this untapped
Potential,
emotion
yeah.
and potential.
That's your opportunity.
Yep.
That's what Debra was talking about, was, that was your talk, was how you actually started your group by talking to your neighbors, asking people about the local park, and then you can start off with you and one other person and go out there on a Saturday morning and just do something. Clean up a little bit, clean up the leaves, pick up the trash. It can start that way with 2 people, going out to the park one Saturday morning and then going out the next Saturday morning. And before too long, you might be the nucleus of a new parks group, a new friends of group.
Yeah, I mean, you can really actually just you and some friends who have a shared desire to go fix a specific park that's near you that nobody else is touching. Just pick a Saturday or pick a Sunday and contact Leenda and say, I want to do an It's My Park event where I organize some people. Maybe it's just you and 2 friends. You just go to the park and do it. That's how you start. That's how I started.
Yeah, be sure to get everybody's phone number and email and all that. So that's key. That's key. Yeah. Yes.
I was just wondering, beyond cleaning up the trash and leaves, you've gotten into some more sophisticated projects. I saw you laid some stones, you planted some sophisticated plantings. How does that work with Parks Department? The commissioners here. I was just interested how you can get into such extreme horticulture, and how does the Parks Department deal with the plantings and what kind of plantings, and who does the design?
Well, I can tell you, in our case, for Stewards, Hudson Park, we did the design. I admitted that I put it onto paper for people, but we got our heads together and really thought about the vision that we had for that space. In terms of, they are complex projects, as we discovered the hard way, but all of our projects are approved by the Parks Department. And that's very important. I think that's why you need to be a stewards group or a friends of group in a park, and because you have to go through some approval process.
And it didn't happen overnight either. They actually started with the horticultural projects, the simple mulching projects, and they built up to the point where they applied for a capacity grant to be able to do that sort of transformative work.
I think I need counsel. Pretty much what's going on in these questions. I have an interest in a small piece of Van Cortlandt Park called Memorial Grove. It's in the neighborhood of 2 acres. I've been doing this since 2006, 11, 12 years already. We managed to get the place restored, but what I can't get is a steady flow of volunteers to help maintain. It's very, like it says, grove. It's got like 50 trees in there that drop leaves, branches all the time, forgetting about the fall. You know, so now and then the Parks Department is able to get volunteers to come in. It's very sparse. How do you get a steady flow? I've been trying to get the ROTC involved, and the different universities in the Bronx involved, and this and that, and I don't seem to have that button to make it work.
I haven't figured it out in Van Cortlandt Park either. We don't have a steady flow of the same volunteers. We work a lot with groups that come one time or a couple times a year. Sorry, I don't have the answer for Van Cortlandt Park. But one thing, I don't know why we haven't done this before, but we should partner together, do some volunteer events together. I'd be more than happy to help promote your events, and we can coordinate a few days that we can have our staff there to help you out and get some of our volunteers. One thing I've learned is we don't do the once a week thing, which I love that idea, but it's a little bit more challenging. It's with Van Cortlandt Park too, because we are so big that we don't do just one community. We have 5 different communities that surround the park. But for our volunteer events for the general public, some days one person will show up, another day 50 people will show up, so you never really know what to expect. So I always try to get a group to sign up, so I know that there at least will be a group of 10 people. But yeah, let's talk, because I don't know why we don't do programs together. We should.
Would you suggest, as this gentleman suggested, that there be a Friends of the Memorial Garden there with flags and the monuments?
Yeah, I mean, we are the Friends of Van Cortlandt Park as a whole, but I love the idea of having groups in different
Right.
sections of the park taking care of that park. And that would be my ideal structure, to have the park divided into like a dozen sections, and to know that there was a group dedicated to that section would be amazing. And that's something that actually just talking to the commissioner about earlier, that if we could do something like that, it would be great. So I want to encourage as much as I can that happening. So.
And right next door to you in Community Board 7, the Friends of Moshlu Parklands is 5 groups that is comprised. So, that's another alternative model to consider. It doesn't have to be just one group doing the same thing. If you have friends that are interested in different parts of the park, or who's interested in doing just the program, or just into the plant bed, or into mulching the trees, or whatever, they could be the subgroup of the Friends of group that you would like to create. The key is consistency and not exhausting yourself. You don't want to turn something that you love to do into something that you're just like, oh, I can't do this. They're amazing. These groups here are amazing because they understand more or less the passion that comes from, their communities to keep going. You have to understand what's going on your block, within that park or in that playground, to know that, okay, well, we can't start 8 o'clock in the morning, but we could start at 11. Those are the kind of variations you need to understand with your community members to make things work.
We have any? Yes. Deputy Inspector O'Toole from the 50th Precinct.
Hello, Bob. How are you? Commissioner, how are you? Everyone? We want to be involved with parks. We want to help you. Okay, I know the Henry Hudson, Hudson Park. I know we've been a little involved with you. Russ, you stewards, who are you?
You bet.
We've never heard of you.
Well, I'll talk to you later.
There,
all right?
there you go. That's what we want you to do. Christina, I know you yell at me all the time. So we want, as we move more towards community policing, we want to be involved with the Parks Department. We want to help your stewardship of these parks. Now, we also want to help you to be safe and secure. That's another thing. You know, people talk, oh, I just came from the Democratic Club meeting earlier. Well, I'm sorry, but you'll like this joke thing. We were talking about the recent event along downtown where the guy drove a truck onto the bike path. You know, what can we do about things like that? You know, the community says, oh, should we put up barriers here at Van Cortlandt Park? You know, I explained, here we are in the Democratic Club and there's 30 people there, and they said, oh, but there's just 30 people here. I said, yeah, but there are 30 Democrats. Okay, so they might be a target. I'm a Trumper, no. In any case, it's not. We need to try and help you. Okay, we're here to help you. You know, I go to any park events that are out there. I've seen you at many of them, and we want to help. We want to help people. We want to make it safe as well. Okay, and make it safe and secure. Eventually. I know Parks is putting money into their budgets for security. I know they are. We're putting cameras in Van Cortlandt Park, things like that. These are important things that are going to help and keep you safe and secure, and that's what we want to do. Okay? And I also have 8,000 Twitter followers, so you know, I can tweet out a lot of stuff. All right. All right. Thank you.
Inspector, thank you very much. Thank you. So all of the parks groups, I mean, that's an important thing to remember, that we have somebody in the precinct, the commander of the precinct, who's prepared to work with us and do whatever can be done to enhance the security of the parks as well. I mean, the best thing we can do for the parks in terms of security is get people out into them. The safest parks are the parks that people use, and the most dangerous ones are the ones that aren't being used. So, you know, having friends of and all the things we're talking about tonight to enhance the attractiveness of these parks is one of the most important things we can do to make our parks safe. Do we have any other questions? All right, well, thank you everybody for coming out. Thank you to our panelists. You were wonderful. Thank you to BronxNet. I'm going to ask the committee members to stay for just 5 minutes in the back of the room. Anybody who came tonight and did not sign in, please do sign in right up here up front. And thank you once again.